Hey, and welcome to today's podcast. My name is Trey Ford, and here with me is my co-host, Carter Phillips. In this episode, we'll be examining a unique religious small group experience known as Fight Night. This group was a weekly Christian small group that Carter and I were mutually a part of. Through this discussion, we will explore how religion influenced key aspects of the group, its climate, cohesion, and the satisfaction of its members. Drawing on our personal shared experiences and group observations and extensive research, we will aim to unpack the ways faith shared shapes our interpersonal group dynamics in both positive and in challenging ways. Carter, why don't you go ahead and describe what Fight Night was?
Yeah, so Fight Night, it kind of started a little small. It was a group of MA members, which is like a mentoring alliance. It's a local group. It wasn't supposed to be that, but the leader was a prevalent member of MA. So whenever he started it, it was mostly like an MA group. And then he started teaching college at South Spring, which is a local Baptist church here. And that's whenever I started getting involved, was because that was like the first college group at South Spring. And so it just started and it continued and it continued. And it's the basic structure of it. Every week is something different, but it interchanges. So every month, it'd be the same rotation. So if you want to get into that.
Those rotations, we met on Thursday nights. I also found out Fight Night through South Spring when I was attending there. Now I'm a youth pastor somewhere else. But it was Bible study, we had prayer, we had community nights. Community nights were generally just fun nights. We just played games or whatever it was. And then we just rotate between those three, right?
And then we would also, if people were comfortable enough, we would have a
testimony.
A testimony night.
Yeah, a testimony night would be the other thing that we rotated. But those are more rare.
Yeah.
But it was always Bible study rotated with prayer and then a community night. So around once a month you would have each of those things.
Yeah.
And there was probably around like 20 to 30 people on average. As it went on, it just fluctuates as group does. Most of the members are our age, 18 to like 24, college age students and things like that. But so that is generally what Fight Night was. And then as we talked about group climate is just kind of the atmosphere that the group finds itself in. It can be like open or defensive or anything like that. And one of the studies that I found really interesting when I was looking into this was how this study was examining how people who experienced an open climate, among other things, it was several different factors, had a higher self-efficacy and belief of like what they could actually do. And as I was thinking about religion and how these small groups interact, my mind was going towards how an open climate, at Fight Night particularly, I felt it was a very open climate. It allowed people to share things, for one, but it also allowed, when we had prayer nights, almost everyone prayed. And there was a huge belief that you could pray when often people are going to be hesitant to pray in public. That group really had a huge self-efficacy, or at least it helped me a lot to believe that I could pray out loud,
And I also found a couple of different studies about how communal practice, at least in a religious sense, bolster a foundation of trust between group members. And especially with like worship or with like volunteer work, it's just an increased amount of trust in that group.
Yeah, that's great. Moving on to group cohesion. Cohesion is generally and typically how well the members glue together and stay together. And how I found this interesting study that was talking about how they tested and they put these people into these different groups and had them drum to a beat. And one of the beats was really predictable and synchronous and like this. The other beat was a little off-putting and wasn't as predictable. And it was testing how this shared behavior of having to drum to the same beat together would influence the group cohesion, would the group feel closer together. And the groups did, both groups did. The one that was irregular and the one that was regular both experienced a higher amount of cohesion going after that, and that really showed how shared beliefs and shared really behaviors help. So again, I think like prayer, when we're talking Bible study and when we're having the shared behavior of one all going to Fight Night, and all doing these things, it's really helping the members feel cohesive. And then we're all reading the same scripture. We're talking together. We're praying together. Everyone's praying. Things like that really help build a highly cohesive group within Finite when I was a part of it.
And I was reading this one study about how whenever a group member or a leader is not following these like public or private walkthrough of their belief, it just kind of breaks apart that cohesion and later on just breaks the group entirely. So I was thinking like a larger kind of research that should probably be done in that field is how specific leaders in a religious setting should be showing their members how they live without being like overbearing on that person, and like kind of how it changes over the months and how some groups don't respond well to that or that sort of thing.
Yeah, and certainly if we look back to the leader of Fight Night, I think they did a really good job of showing us their public and private lives.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of the people that came worked with the leader and knew his wife or worked with his wife even, but also they just always let us into their homes.
Yeah.
You know, their kids were always a part of it. You could show up early and be eating dinner with them or whatever it was, and their house was just really open.
Yeah.
Within Fight Night, then also even in times that weren't dedicated to Fight Night, you could go there.
And I think like one of their sayings was like, "We don't leave the doors locked."
Yeah,
you can just come in whenever.
And so I think he did. That was a huge part of the cohesion was how open they both were about their lives and how dedicated they were to the group and to God.
Yeah.
You know, and then we moving into kind of the last part of talking about member satisfaction. I found this really interesting study that was based in Europe, and it examined 26 countries, and it was seeing how religion was related to life satisfaction. So are people generally satisfied with the life they're living, and are they religious as well, and is there a really big correlation with that? And they reported a significant correlation between people living in religion and participating in religious activities like small groups, prayer, church going, and things like that, and increased life satisfaction. This is kind of besides the point, but one of the most interesting things I found was that in the regions, they also did it by regions, so those regions that were going to be generally more religious, and the non-religious people in those regions reported a higher life satisfaction because of the religious people, where in regions where it was mainly non-religious people, they reported a lower life satisfaction than those same atheist or non-religious people in the regions with religious people, which was really interesting to see how like religion kind of improves things. But we see that, and we know that if religion causes or helps correlate towards a high life satisfaction. And you can look at that in small groups. Small groups are a huge thing about life satisfaction and just feeling belonged and connected to people. And I knew a lot of people in Fight Night were pretty satisfied with the community that we had built there, and how that was a good thing when we had it. Fight Night's no longer going on right now, just busyness and other things like that. But yeah, do you have anything?
Yeah, and along with that, you also should be talking about conflicts, because conflicts will arise in these groups. And I was reading this interesting study about how whenever these members have a foundation of trust and they look at each other like peers, that a lot of conflicts go resolved. They don't go unresolved. And whenever these conflicts arise, sometimes if somebody has like a mixed group of like believing people, it can create irrational conversations rather than a like goal of growth. It kind of just like turns into an argument match at the end of the day. And whenever people actually like come together, they're like, hey, I don't agree with that. And we've had this happen multiple
Yeah.
times.
A lot of people like to disagree with me at fight night.
A lot of people like to disagree with me.
Yeah.
We've had multiple sit-down conversations, but they were able to get resolved because, I mean, we care about each other. We're looking for growth. And yeah.
Yeah, I agree. And, really as we're coming to an end of our little time here tonight, or this afternoon, I think in the end, what religion does to smaller groups is it gives people a much higher cohesion, because it's not just that, hey, I like you as a person, I want to hang out with you in a group setting, but there's this higher dedication to something bigger than both of us in that. And so it helps with the conflict management and other things like that, as you're, I think, probably going to be more dedicated to staying within that group because of the religious aspects. And we read things in scripture that talk about how we're supposed to be united above all and not let conflict or strife have a place among us.
Yeah.
And so figuring that out, I think what religion does in small groups is it performs and gives people much higher cohesion and satisfaction rate as compared to a group that would be non-religious, and it gives you more of a reason to stick together in the long run,
Yeah, and I mean, even in most of my like friend groups that aren't, there's just not that cohesion.
Yeah. Like I was a part of a D&D group for
Yeah.
a semester, and I haven't seen any of those guys in a semester, whereas we're no longer part of Fight Night, but I still see many people from Fight Night.
Yeah.
I see you periodically, I see other members of that group, because of that, kind of bonding that happens over religious things as compared to like D&D or anything that's not going to be as high of like a bonding factor.
And even like getting texts from members like, hey, how are you doing? Hey, you want to get coffee? That's just like a recurrent thing.
Yeah.
I've gotten coffee with so many people. I don't even like coffee, but I indulge in their liking. But I mean, yeah, it's just,
It's a high bonding factor, I think, for sure. And so I think that concludes our little podcast for the episode.
it does.
See you later, man.